Breakfast puppies?
This podcast contains adult language and content and is meant for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to the Glitterbois. Yes.
So, as eventually happens in most role-playing games, every now and then you'll come up against a place where the urge to continue to play your character versus the odds they're facing and the consequences of them not winning will make you think about a final strike, about going out in a blaze of glory. And I faced that last week and in typical Matthew fashion opted for the blaze of glory. And so this week I wanted to talk a little bit about character death and how to do it in a way you're comfortable with what happens, your DM is comfortable what happens, and you can look back on this character as something you enjoyed and not opportunities lost. And I think that's something really important to talk about because anyone who's been role-playing for a while gets invested in a character. This is someone who you think like for a certain number of hours each week, every other week. This is someone who you've spent a lot of time with. This is a role you've taken on, and it can suck to lose that. But I think it's important that if you lose that in a way that you're comfortable with and in a way that seems fitting, then it almost becomes a good thing. And it gives you a chance to try something new. Now, my character, Able, was just vastly overpowered last week. He got jumped and he had the foresight to rig himself up to explode. And so we ended our last game with that happening. I pulled my enemies in close, pulled the ripcord and said, we all go together. And I was okay with that ending.
It took me by surprise that I went there. I want to talk about Able for a moment. Able, we've mentioned multiple times in this series as Matthew's character in our Chaos Earth turned Rifts Earth game. And Able is a character that ultimately I really liked. Able was the character who would do things. He would make things happen. He wasn't an analysis paralysis type of character. Not a lot of stewing about things. I could always rely upon Able to move things forward. Even if it wasn't in a direction I wanted it to go or was prepared for, at least something would be happening. With the situation of Able was that he was difficult to plan for and difficult to provide challenges for, difficult to instill the fear of Rift's Earth into. Not 100%, but if you are familiar with a trope, there's a character from internet forums that was from back in the day, and this character was designed to ruin Call of Cthulhu, and the character's name was Old Man Henderson. If you are familiar with the Old Man Henderson trope, Able wasn't that bad, but he simply had a lot of aspects of his character that were difficult for me to plan around, and I wasn't expecting to kill him in that session, but he was being hunted and the hunters came and the hunters had the ability to get in really close to him and not have him know because they were just that good. And they had captured him and were starting to tear apart his armor. He's like, well, fuck this. Boom. And it took me by surprise. I was like, I couldn't finish the session at that point. We ended early because I was like, I don't know what to do here. I have thoughts on killing characters. We'll get to that later. Back to you.
I think I got off lucky. I thought you were going to say Leroy Jenkins. I'm not familiar with the Call of Cthulhu character that you mentioned, but...
And I don't mean it as an insult because Old Man Henderson is kind of a fuck you character. There are some similarities, but again, it's not a 100% thing. It's just there were things that Able could do that were, like, oh, well, shit. I didn't plan for that, but you got me there. Kind of like, fuck.
I don't want to memorialize him too much. I wanted to talk more about how you should let go of a character. Whenever I run a game and whenever I feel that I can influence a game, I will set up ways to die in a memorable way, doing the most good. I normally play a good aligned character. I think I've only played an evil character twice, and I didn't much enjoy it. That's not escapism for me.
Yeah, same.
That's just a personal choice. That's, your mileage may vary. I've always been a fan of the concept of the final strike, which was made popular by Mercedes Lackey, being how a wizard can take all the power that they pull out of the world, coalesce it, and then just not release it outwards, but inwards.
D&D did something like that with a wizard staff. One of the oldest things in the AD&D rules was that magical staves, you could destroy them in what was called a retributive strike. It would 100% guarantee to consume you, but would probably also consume a significant portion of the world that existed around you.
Yeah. I like those last guardian at the gates dying valiantly kind of moments, and I'm willing to put a character into it. I will try to live as much as possible, but there are ways. If you die stupid, you will feel bad. If you die in a noble way, you'll feel good. And it's going to be it's hard to let go of a character, especially when you start getting up there in levels. I mean, I've played a character for 4 years once, and when he died, that sucked. That was a bad day for me. But it's also a chance to try something new. I don't care how invested you are. You can look around at your party and go, "Oh, they can do something cool. I wish I could do." No, I'm doing this. All right. This is not just your burial of your person. This is your chance to try something you haven't tried before. And I'm honestly really looking forward to the next character we're bringing forth into this campaign. It's weird when your character doesn't fit, and Able didn't fit. And I think a lot of that was stuff I did, because I chose to play a bog standard soldier in a fairly high powered game of riffs. Like there were Glitterbois and dragons and cyanites. Now our team wasn't all that powerful, but we were against things that were.
Yeah.
And so as a player, I started looking for ways to improve my character. And I think the wall I ran into was Able had too many hard and fast rules Taylor built around him. The house rulings, I don't know if you can see it, but NPC is laughing.
Yeah, my grenade rules changed drastically thanks to Able.
That, and he had this luck thing. And while it is cool to be able to bring up your character, it also makes things harder for your DM. And I think we had kind of reached this K value with Able, and it was really time to shrug him off and try something new, I felt.
Able seemed like he had a death wish going on.
He did. It was on his character sheet.
Okay. And
it's one of his insanities.
Death wish is an interesting one that is difficult to DM for, because unless you're a GM who likes killing characters, you don't want to just flippantly kill the character, but he's got the death wish there. So you're trying to come up with realistic situations that are also giving an avenue of escape. In retrospect, I should have just seen that as his willingness to die. I have regrets on the way that went down, but it's happened now. So
yeah, don't feel bad about it. He was a difficult character. And when we rolled on that insanity table, he got Death Wish and Daredevil, which made him just, an honorable lunatic is what he became. But I mean, if you've ever, if you're a new player and you're facing down an impossible situation and you might lose your character, don't get angry about it. That's a part of everyone's role-playing game experience. None of these characters last forever. I heard a little known fact about the Forgotten Realms that was retconned later, but Elminster died in the original campaign where they came up with the Forgotten Realms. And these are just things that happen, and it's a part of the game, and you have to make your peace and be comfortable with it. And don't forget, it's always a chance to play something new, something you haven't done before. It's a chance to stretch yourself as a player. Actors don't want to get typecast. They're terrified of that. They want to command a vast amount of roles, to be able to bring everything they can to the stage. And as a player, that should also be your goal. You never want to be a one-trick pony.
I've known players throughout my gaming career that literally were the one-trick pony. Like, they would only ever play a certain character, and if that character died, they would come back next with that character's next of kin who was almost identical to the previous character. And it's a joke that is made many times in gaming fiction. Like, literally in The Gamers Part 2, I think it's, the pile of infinite bards that this guy made.
Knights of the Dinner Table does a long segment on that too.
But I agree. I don't think most people are like that.
Well, I also don't want to dictate what you should be getting out of a role-playing game, because if that's what you want to do and that's your form of escape, well, then, just find yourself a group that's okay with that. But I think your underlying goal should be to think elastically and try new things. So, yeah, I mean, character death is not something to be feared. As long as you can make it a good death, a heroic death, I think it's just part of the overarching story. In any good story, characters die.
Character death, from the perspective of the game master, it's the same. People sit down at a table to get different things out of the game, be they the player or the GM. And some GMs thrive in that combativeness, the throwing adversity at them and like, can they survive this? Hope they don't. And even when I GM, I pretend that, whenever a new monster or enemy comes up and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a 20, motherfucker. I get into it, but I don't actually want to kill the characters unless I'm running a game like my own Hammer Crawl, where that's the goal. In Rifts, I don't want to do that. I want the player to at least be able to feel the results of the investment that they put into creating the character. And sometimes, depending upon the player, if a character dies, maybe they feel that they haven't quite received that, that reward from playing yet. So they're like, oh, I need a few more sessions with this character, kind of thing. Or others, they're clearly tired of it and want something new. I mean, you've always got the player who just wants to play a different character every 2 or 3 sessions, but you don't have to kill their characters. That's a whole other subject. Killing a character in a story-heavy game can have major consequences on the progress of that story. I've been running kind of a sandbox, so Able's loss isn't the worst thing ever. I had put things in place for Able to find specifically that I thought he would think was cool, but fortunately, I think those things will work equally well for the character that you're bringing in now. It's tough. It's sad. Killing a player's character, you don't know how that's going to go down if it just happens when the dice are rolled. And I believe that if you're playing a game where there's hit points and, wounds are on the table, you're using guns, and the game has a mechanic for death, then death should be something that everyone understands could happen. It's simply the terms of that. Like, when the hit points run out, does the group agree that they've died? Or does the group agree that they might come back captured or, somewhere else, or comatose or something? Like, how does the group want to handle that? And that's something you really should discuss in the first session where you sit down and talk about what you're going to play.
I believe we actually did. You said that Rift's Earth was an incredibly lethal place, and not to pal around and be idiots, kind of like we were in the beginning. I think every good story has an end, and I think it's up to the player and the GM to make that ending memorable. You never want to die because your endurance ran out and you were still swimming across the ocean. That's a bad death.
Drowning deaths are just not fun unless it's like a dramatic drowning. Yeah. Like you're drowning because Tiamat is now holding you under the water or something.
Yeah. Play your characters as heroes, even be they, good aligned heroes or anti-heroes, but they need to be mighty and they need to be memorable. And if the manner of their passing is memorable, it's a good passing. and it shouldn't be something to be regretted.
Agreed.
Yeah. So that's my little spiel on character death. Do you have anything else you wanted to say about this?
Yeah. What I generally encourage in most games is to try and predict when it might happen. And if you feel that a character's death is coming, don't surprise the player with it. I didn't feel that was coming last time, so it was kind of a surprise to me. But if you feel that it is imminent, like if a character is in a situation in the last session and you're like, man, there's no way that they can survive this, or if they're heading for something that's clearly going to kill them, or if they're juicer and their time is running out, I think that it's generally a good idea to talk to the player in advance of the session and say, look, you probably won't survive this. How do you want to handle this?
Yeah.
And give them the option of that final action and make it so that, their death isn't an ignoble loss.
Yeah. Just remember, we're trying to do something larger than life here. Otherwise, we'd just be playing chores, and that's not fun.
I don't think any Palladium games that I've ever read are really good with casual death. Like, they seem to all have drama built into them. A big, larger than life, dramatic thing is happening in the game, in the world around. So typically if a death happens in one of those games, sure, the dice probably made it happen, but it's probably going to be memorable.
Just try and play your character that way. Don't always rely on your DM or GM to get you there. Some of that's on you. If you're just sitting around waiting for something to happen, you sound like the first one that the scouts for the invaders are going to take out, because you're not paying attention.
And it could simply be that the GM's like, I need this player to do something, so they're the ones who's getting kidnapped or something.
Yeah. If you're ready to retire a character, you don't always have to die too. We had someone before us who was in 2 campaigns, effectively playing the same person.
Yeah.
As I understand.
Yep.
Scott.
The doctor, the robot.
Yeah. And he just wasn't feeling it in our campaign and came back as someone who is far more active in the combats. So there is always the possibility that you don't have to jump off the cliff or into the dragon's mouth or, pull that ripcord. You can just say, hey, I'm staying at base and I'd like this guy to be me for next game. I become an NPC. I become a resource.
Yeah. And it's even better if you're running like an ensemble game where you have the players make multiple characters and just decide who they're sending out on which mission. Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, none of this that I've said applies to NPC's game of Hammer Crawl. That's just a wood chipper.
Yeah, that's my D&D clone of Murder Dungeons. So,
yeah.
And it's a lot of fun.
Anyway, that's pretty much all I had. Yeah, just don't fear death. Don't court it too much, but if you do go, try and make it memorable, and certainly don't take it personally. It's a function of the game.
Die gloriously.
Yeah, die with honor. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Good night.
You've been listening to The Glitterbois, a Palladium Books fan podcast. Glitterbois, Rifts, the Megaverse, and all other such topics are the property of Kevin Siembieda and Palladium Books. Please buy all their stuff and help keep them in print and making more games. You can order directly at palladiumbooks.com, and their entire catalog is available digitally at Drive-Thru RPG as well. Our opening music is 8-Bit Bass and Lead by Furby Guy from freesound.org. This closing music is Caravana by Philip Gross, available at freemusicarchive.org. All sound effects used are self-made or acquired via Creative Commons 0 license. If you like what you have heard, find us on Twitter and Facebook as The Glitterbois. That's BOIS. And check us out online at breakfastpuppies.com/glitterboys. And also join us on the Breakfast Puppies Network Discord at breakfastpuppies.com/Discord. And if you want to help us out, please spread the word and help us build a community. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next time.